This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Welcome to Usapang Bayan. Ako po si George Chua, kasama ang aking co-host na si Rach Marquez. Pag-uusapan po natin ang mahahalagang pangyayari at issue na kinaharap ng ating bayan.
Makakasama po natin sa gabing ito para pag-usapan ang Motorcycle Sports and Safety PAMSS Founding President Ms. Ruby Ann Kagaoan. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
Good evening, Ruby Ann.
Good evening, George.
Maybe the best way we can start our show is let's talk a little bit about yourself, who Ruby Ann Kagaoan is.
Yes.
And I've never really heard of your organization before, PAMSS, no? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the origins and the advocacies of PAMSS itself.
Yes, thank you, George, for giving me this exposure. This is my first television appearance as PAMSS founding president. First of all, I'm a writer and an artist. So a lot of the people from the motorcycling community have asked me, how did I get into motorcycling? I was back riding in 2014, and that gave me the feeling of freedom. So I got interested in motorcycling. And I came across a comment of a person who was into the environment. That one, I've had that in my heart since I was very young. I wrote a play in the Cultural Center of the Philippines when I was 17. It won, so it's been in my heart, environment. He was into charity tours, and it turned out he was organizing the biggest charity tours in Europe, and I invited him to come over to the Philippines so that he could help indigenous people primarily. In Europe, he was helping the orphans across Europe. So when he came over here, he asked me to connect him to a person who was part of his other organization. So I did not know how big his involvement is in the other organization. So I showed him the country, and he said, "You have such great terrain. You should bring the World Championship here for motorcycling." And I was totally clueless at the time, and this was 3 years ago. So he was saying, let's start with the motocross. And he was explaining how they would jump. It was not in me at the time. Eventually, I got more involved with motorcycling and met the leaders of this organization in Sepang, in Malaysia. And this organization is the world governing body for motorcycle racing, motorcycle sports, and it's called Federación Internacional de Motociclismo. I met the global leaders and the Asian leaders, and for the first time, I saw road racing. I was right at the pit lane, and the ground was shaking. It was quite an experience. I was trying to take photos, and when I looked at my camera, it wasn't even there. That's how fast they were. And eventually, I got to meet Valentino Rossi, and he's a legend in motorcycling. He's a 9-time world champion. So I was convinced, yes, we can bring this to the Philippines. It would turn the country from developing to advanced. In simple terms, they still call us a third world country. So from third world to first world country. And I got into the figures. They sent me information, and it's amazing. In 1 weekend, a country can earn 3.5 million euros for an investment that's just a drop in the bucket, particularly for motocross, which is off-road. So this is the soil, the dust is off-road. So I pursued it. And of course, my first target were the tycoons. And to my surprise, they were not interested. And then through my own network, I tried to reach out to the Filipino racing community. And when I mentioned the name of the global organization, they were averse. They were like, there was that distance. So I got curious, who would reject the opportunity to have a world championship? This is like having the Olympics every year in our country. Olympics happens every 4 years, but this is annual, thereafter, once we host it. And then through a lot of conversation, first on Facebook, chat, and then call, and then face-to-face meeting, I got to learn about the grievances of the Filipino motorcycling community and the death of our best road racer. His name is Michael Buncio. Back in 2011, when he was impaled on a rebar in a pre-qualifying race in Clark's International Speedway. And much of it was due to the negligence of, at this point, it's a former NSA. Because at this point, we are the new NSA for the Philippines, for motorcycling. So that was January 2015. So it wasn't as simple as just getting a sponsor. The sponsorship, as I said, is very small and the return is great. So if they wanted to, they would grab at this. Yeah, so what's the hesitation? And so I had that point back in January 2015 wherein I could turn my back on this because it's too complicated, too big, beyond my life. Well, my life is, I'm an artist, I'm a writer, but then there's no other person connected to the world organization besides the other guy and me. It's just me. So if I turn my back on this, no one else can fight this cause. And somebody said to me, it presents itself to you. It's like it just, so there's something higher than us that presented this situation to me. So I did my investigation, and my goodness, this guy he has been conducting bogus election. He's not even the real president of that NSA. I pursued it, and then I had a clog somewhere, and I saw it's a whole part of the kind of governance we had before. So I dropped my pen, I was making my report, I was hearing all sides, and I was doing my report. And I decided to change my strategy, which was to be part of changing the whole governance of our country. And so when that was successful, against all the odds, and you know how difficult that was, coming from practically bottom rung, our current president rose up the ranks. I fought for him. I was part of those social media campaigners. Finally, I was introduced to the PSC chairman, and he is William Butch Ramirez. And he gave me a 100% support. I was backed up by two key people. One is a dear, dear friend of mine, and I would mention him. He's our Senate president. And in the previous year, I was still just asking him to consider fielding Mayor Duterte. Over the months, gently suggesting, because I figured out, the World Championship, the country has to work to have a World Championship. So the best person to even have sympathy for this cause would have to be, first of all, above corruption, and secondly, somebody who understands motorcycling as you do, George. So I supported him. And so I got the full support of the PSC chairman. The other person is the father of motorsports in the Philippines. His name is Butch Chase. If you talk to any racer, they would know him. And with that, the next thing I did was to put together a real leadership. And that's why I had to talk to the industry, to the academe people. And I was faced with, some people couldn't believe because I just suddenly appeared. They didn't know I was fighting for this. But the people who trusted me, I really, give my salute to them because they believe in the vision. They believe in my integrity. I would never fool anyone. It's not in my character. They believe in the cause. And so this, I formed this in right after I got the full support. I wrote formally, and I was given the accreditation by the Philippine Sports Commission on January 17, 2017. And the SEC papers came out because of all of the signatures and everything on February 10. And right away, I went to the headquarters of the Federación Internacional de Motociclismo, made my report, presented PAMSS, and also presented the whole collection of evidences, hard evidences I gathered about the previous NSA, and they were shocked. So
essentially, you're the National Sports Association
exactly
for motorcycle.
for motorcycle.
When we talk about motorcycle, it's anything and everything that has to do with motorcycles, whether we're talking about regardless of displacements. Is that correct?
The generic term is actually powered two-wheelers. So this includes from scooters to underbones. This is an Asian term, underbones. They
Right.
don't really use it in
Yes.
other countries. So these are the small bikes below 450cc, and above 450cc we call the big bikes.
Actually, 400cc seems to be the
400
cutoff because of the use
The-
of the national highway system. Yes.
Okay.
No, the other question there is, okay, since the authorizing authority is the Philippine Sports Commission,
Yeah.
do you get your funding from the Philippine Sports Commission, or do you raise it internally, or how does that work?
The Philippine Sports Commission will support us financially when we have our activities, our tournaments, and everything that has to do with the sport. But in terms of operation and these expenses, this is where I really now need the support of the motorcycling industry and all other industries that back up the motorcycling, because there are others, the banking, the tires, fuel. It's a whole intricate industry.
So essentially, it's a private association
No.
supported by the government.
No, it is registered as a non-profit. We don't, everything that will come in, there will be, of course, a lot of incomes that will come in, but it will go into the development of the NSA, the athletes, and whatever grants that we can give the athletes to develop them, training. So it's a non-profit organization.
Okay. So the officers are also selected by its own founders and things like that.
As regards the motorcycle development, it's called MDPPA, Motorcycle Development Participants Program Association. MDPPA, they are the premier manufacturing association of the Philippines, comprised of the Japanese brands, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Honda, and a Taiwanese brand, Kimco. Yeah, they are part, they have a representative, and he happens to be the president for
Okay.
2017.
Well, we need to have a station break at this point. Sa amin pong pagbabalik, makakasama pa rin natin si PAMSS founding president, Ms. Ruby Ann Kagaoan. Please stay tuned.